Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. So today we have a fascinating topic to dive into. That is common cybersecurity threats in the automotive industry. We'll be exploring the 6th edition of the Auto Cybersecurity Report published by Upstream Security, focusing on the key cybersecurity challenges faced in the recent years. So without further ado, let's get started. Falgun, over to you.
All right. So today we are talking about the automotive cybersecurity threats as assessed by the Upstream report. So today in this session, we will be looking into the report. We will be trying to decipher and understand what the Upstream report 2023 says. So in the Upstream report 2023, I mean, this was published in 2024. So normally what happens is this organization understands studies the industry trends and publishes the report. So 2024 report will be coming soon. Off the top of my head, which I can think of, I think it's somewhere in a month or two. We will get the 2024 report as well. Uh, Subscribe to our videos to get a much more understanding on the 2024 reports as well. So going back to the 2023 report. So cybersecurity awareness has increased a lot in the automotive sector. So given the fact that there is a lot of software defined vehicles coming around and a lot of software activities coming around, and also with the UNEC regulations with having the OTA requirements, as mandatory requirements for all the OEMs, where you need to have your software in the connected cars, you need to be able to flash the software over the air. This increases a lot of this gives a potential for hacking, for cyber threats. Now these cyber threats are divided into two parts. So one, as a manufacturer, what you also can do is you can set up your own team to understand what are the vulnerabilities in your architecture, and this legally is called as white hat attacks. That means legally you are trying to find out with your own services, your own team, your own set of experts, to identify what are the vulnerabilities in your system. So this is more of a proactive approach. What you do, this is also one of the things that you will have to do if you are complying to ISO 21434. So for more details on ISO 21434, please do also look into our other videos as well. So in this ISO 21434, you will see how one part of ISO 21434 focuses on how do you do vulnerability analysis or vulnerability scanning, where in order to get the details of vulnerability scanning, you need to identify what are the threats. So there are various ways you can do this. By one of the ways, like your penetration testing or fuzzing. So these are the ethical ways. So the common term that is used is ethical hacking, which means you know why you are doing these kind of attacks on your system, and there is no malicious intent on this. So that's why it is called as white hat attacks. Now the other attack is of course the black hat attack, which is quite opposite to white hat attack, and this is where this is not ethical, this is unethical, which means it is the term which is coined is malicious hacking. And here the primary goal is to have financial gain or grab a lot of information, sensitive information, to exploit a bit more. So mainly the financial gain is something that people will be looking for. And as per the definition of black hat attack, this is more of an illegal and harmful way of doing cyber attacks, which are carried out by, of course, the hacking experts to disrupt the system or exploit the weakness in the system and get some financial gain. Now, according to the Upstream report in 2023, what has happened is 36% of the attacks, or 36% is considered as white hat attack, and the majority, which is much scarier number, 64%, is black hat attack. That means there are 64% attacks which have been done on a malicious intent to get more financial gain. So this is what the report says, and this shows how critical it is to get awareness on the cybersecurity, not just as the developers, but also from the management side, from the organization side, from the manufacturer side, and what needs to be done. And I got some of the other facts in terms of these 2023 report. just going a bit deeper into these black hat attacks is that 95% of the attacks are executed remotely. So that means there are two ways you see this attacks, right? So on the screen that you can see, so there is either a remote attack or um, a long distance attack. And the terminology that is used for long distance attack is the long or long range attack. So how do you classify these two? What is considered as a long range attack and what is considered as a remote attack? So when it is a long range attack, we are or we are literally talking about the physical distance, which means you are not in a close proximity of the vehicle. Since we are talking about the automotive cyber security here, we are not in the proximity of the vehicle, but you are just physically a bit away. Let's say couple of hundreds of meters away, or maybe I don't know, some kilometers away, if that is a possibility. Now, normally what happens in the long range attack is you try to get into the wireless communication system, which means you get into either GPS or GPS network, or you get into some kind of wireless network if vehicle already has some kind of wireless network, which typically not all the vehicles these days have, because they share some kind of data in between all the other ECUs that are there in the WIS system. So you try to get into the network. It can either be CAN is a bit difficult when you are talking about long distance attack, unless you have put a man in the middle inside the system, probably on the OBD port, to gain access to the CAN network. Otherwise, there are Ethernet protocols where you can try to get in the access. Or the other communication channel would be the radio frequency. Of course, there is also a lot of RF attacks these days happening, which in couple of slides we will also see what are the different RF attacks. Now, long range attacks are nothing but you try to get access to these network and perform your attack. That means once you have the access to the network, you can do multiple things. You can either do denial of service, or you can target certain functionality, or you can gain some illegal confidential information. So these are some of the things that you would do. Now the second thing is remote based attacks. Now what are these remote based attacks? So here the difference between the long range attack to remote based attack is you are not really considering any physical distance. You can sit thousands of kilometers away from the targeted device, and you use Internet of Things or any of the networks to get into this let's say to get into the targeted system and perform your attacks. And how would you probably do it? So these are by using phishing or malware attacks or denial of service attacks. So these are different by overloading the systems. So these are different ways where you can perform the attacks. Now, this need not be specifically on the vehicle, but this can also be on the backend systems. So these days, when the vehicles are on the road, there are some backend systems which are also functioning constantly to maintain the smooth functionality of the vehicle. Let's say telemetry data have been being accessed by your backend server. So if the attacks are performed on these backend servers, then the services go offline and then your vehicle gets affected. So there's a live example where normally what happens is in the Tesla vehicles, whenever there is a software upgrade, if you don't do a software upgrade, the vehicle does not start. Once you switch off the vehicle and the vehicle knows that there is a newer software that is available, unless you upgrade your software, the vehicle does not start. And if in this case you somehow hack into the network and block the server, then you cannot use the vehicle anymore. So these are some of the attacks that you can do in the remote based attacks. Now that we have identified the difference between the remote based attacks and the long range attacks, so the data says that 95% of the attacks in 2023 were remote based, which is much more scarier because physical attack at least requires some kind of proximity, but remote, you really don't know who's doing what. And also another key factor here is 37% of the total threat actors action were to get reaching the impact of targeting multiple OEMs. It was not just to specific OEM, not to a specific design, but 37% of these attacks were done in a generic way that it kind of affected many designs, many OEMs designs. So this also again is scary. So when I say 30% or 37% of the attacks were done, so we have a common platform, right? So when we are developing automotive software, now I'm going a bit in depth to the software. So we have something called as AutoSAR, which is a standard mechanism which many OEMs use. Now there can be different standards like this. Now you have a wireless standard for wireless protocol communication. So there is Ethernet communication. So there are many such standards which many OEMs use. Now the 37% threats were on these different standards. That means if the weakness is exposed in this base standard, many OEMs, many cars, millions of cars are vulnerable to these attacks. Now this is the quick highlight or the biggest highlight of the 2023 Upstream report that our team gathered. Now, next, Dharmesh will take you through um, more in-depth analysis of what were the specific attacks that were happened in 2023. Over to you, Dharmesh.
Thanks, Falgun, for the overview of the report highlights. So, as we discussed, now we'll go more into details about some of the attack vectors and also some of the threats mentioned in this particular report. So now let's discuss about the attack vectors and from where the most of the attacks happen. So before we discuss this topic, let's understand what is an attack vector. So as per the ISO SA 21434, which is the international standards for automotive cybersecurity, an attack vector is defined as a path or a mean by which threat actors can gain unauthorized access to the system or a vehicle, or you can consider as an asset to carry out a cyber attack. In context to automotive system, attack vector represent the specific methods or an entry point that attacker can exploit to compromise the security or safety of the vehicle, or we can consider a issue level or component level. So in this figure, it's depicted the potential attack vectors and connected the vehicle, modern vehicles, which all are the entry points where the attacker found that most of the vulnerabilities, found the weaknesses, and get control of the vehicle. So in the figure, you can see that most attack happened via telematic application services. So these systems are basically enables the communication between the vehicle and external network, providing the services like navigation system or diagnostic and remote control. So they are common target for cyber attackers due to their connectivity. The second most attacks are happening is on the infotainment system. These systems provide the entertainment and information services to the driver as well as the passengers. So it often connects to the external network and the devices, making it a potential entry point for the attackers. So if you can see the most of the attacks are happened in 2023, almost 60% of the attacks happen on these two attack surfaces, or we can say attack vectors. So that's where the point it mentioned that 95% our attacks are remote and long distance, and that is nothing but because of these statistics. Apart from these two, we can also see the other attack vectors. For example, API or issue itself, remote keyless entry system, EV charging, database, some of the cellular networks, and protocol level itself, like CAN bus system. So you can see that there are various type of attacks are happening in the current development of the car. So as modern car have so many features included, and it also have so many digital things implemented in the car, it's most vulnerable for various things. So now, since we understand about the attack vectors, let's discuss about the some of the common threats that occurred or described in this report. So the first is we'll understand about the remote keyless entry system. So a remote keyless entry system in a car is a convenient feature that allows drivers to lock, unlock, or perform other functions like opening the trunk or activating the panic alarm on their vehicle without physically interacting with the vehicle, or let's say inserting the key into the door lock. Instead of that, the system uses a small handheld device which is called key fob, which communicates wirelessly to the car onboard electronics, and that's how the functionality will work for this remote keyless entry system. So before we understand about how these attacks are possible, let's little bit understand how does this work, or what is the working principle behind this keyless remote entry system. So there are four steps, or we can consider that's how it is working. So one is key fob. We already discussed. The key fob contains the radio transmitter. It's transmitter in it that sends the code or a signal to the car when the button is pressed. Next is receiver in the car. So the car system or particular issue has the receiver that will pick up the signal from sent from the key fob. Next step is to authenticate. So once the signal is received, then the system or issue will verify the authenticity of the sender. In this case, it's a key fob, and it is authenticated via the unique code or encryption key. And once it is authenticated, now that the system understood that it is valid user, or it's coming from valid source, then the car performs the requested action, such as unlocking the door or starting of the engine, etc. Now we have understanding on how does this works. Let's see some of the possible attack happens on this system, or what are the attack vectors possible. So first one is re- replay attack, or let's first talk about the relay attack using the live signal. Uh, in this relay attack, attacker uses two devices to extend the range of the key fob signal, as Falgun mentioned about the long range and short range attacks. So here, uh, generally this key fob will work and in the close proximity. So key fob should be in the defined proximity of the car, then only this functionality of the remoteless key entry will work. So here attacker will use two different devices. One device is placed near to the key fob, for example, owner's pocket, or owner is sitting into the house, and then one device is placed to the house to just pick the signal from this key fob, and other device will be placed near to the car. So the two devices will enhance this signal range, and it will transmit from key fob to near to the vehicle. uh, in this case, the whichever the transmit signal from the first device it received, car will be tricked thinking that it's coming from the key fob which is nearby. So this is how this relay attack will happen. The next attack, possible attack, is replay attack using the stored signal. So basically here, whenever user is locking the car or unlocking, or perform any action, at that time the attacker has the device which will keep on listening what the signals are ongoing between the communication, and he captures these signals. Let's say that when the lock signal is pressed and unlocking is happening, that time attacker recorded this unlock signal, and after certain time he can play this signal, replay this signal, and unlock the car. So that is possible. That is called the replay attack. Next one is the reprogramming key fob. So attackers can exploit the vulnerability in the car software or the key fob programming interface to reprogram the new or existing key fob. And this can be done through the physical access to the car OBD2 port or via the wireless communication. Next one is jamming communication between the key fob and vehicle. So here attacker uses the signal jammer to block the communication between the key fob and car. So this prevents the car from receiving the lock signal, leaving the vehicle unlocked even if the owner press the lock button. Uh, and the last one is impersonating the wireless key fob issue with the CAN injection. So as many of you aware about the how the in-vehicle network communication happens, so it happen via different protocols. CAN is one of them. So controller area network is the internal network that allows the different electronic issue in a car to communicate. Now attackers can inject the malicious message into the CAN bus to impersonate the key fob issue. Now sending command to unlock or start to the car to the main issue which is performing the which is responsible to perform the particular action. So impersonating the wireless key fob issue with uh, CAN injection, that is also very common attack in this particular system. So this is basically overview of the keyless entry system. Now let's discuss about the next potential attack vector, which is the EV charging station exploitation. We'll understand this with an real world example, or at least what they have mentioned in this report. So two of such use cases they have mentioned. One is in January 2023, a hacker exploited a popular screen sharing program to gain access to underlying operating system of a new 350 kilowatt charger from US EV charging company. Here, the hacker could access the OS menu, open the web browser, and navigate to competitor's website while charging app is running in the background. One more incident happened earlier in which the another hacker gained access to the charger's critical settings and could view the things such as like overheat protection. So basically, when we see the EV charging infrastructure, one more important feature is overheat protection, which monitors the how much battery percentage charging is there or what is the internal temperature. All these details are critical, and this considers as a safety criticals. So if this detail gets exposed, attacker can use these details and tweak, and this can be a safety hazard. So in both of these cases, the this cases indicates or the hacking what happened was the ethical one, just to indicate and aim to raise awareness of electrical vehicle charging security concerns. So EV charging station, especially those who's connected to internet or smart chargers, are vulnerable to several type of attacks. These attacks can be target the target charging station itself, the communication between the station and the vehicle, or backend system that manages the charging network. And the attack vectors for the EV charging station includes the physical tampering, manipulating the firmware, installing the malicious update, or exploiting the API vulnerabilities. As I mentioned, it also could be in the infrastructure that these APIs are used for payment purpose. So whenever these new charging stations are there, basically when user is authorized, then once he is done with the charging, automatically payment system is configured and automatically payment is happening. So these APIs also are vulnerable since it is remote access possible. Now let's discuss about the third, and we seen in the second slide where the most of the attacks come, almost 15% was the from the infotainment system. And an infotainment system is a in-vehicle infotainment system is one of the most common attack vectors, as also we seen. So it connects to the internet and is exposed to the installed application and short range communication with mobile phones and Bluetooth devices. As a result, it has access to PII, which is nothing but the personal information identity. So when we perform the TARA analysis as per the ISO 21434, we also see that the information disclosure is assigned to this PII component, which is nothing but your personal identity. So some of the identity should not be exposed to other person. It could be the user ID or your password, something like that. So additionally, this infotainment system often connect to the vehicle's internet network, posing a serious risk to the vehicle. Infotainment system can be a part of least resistance for malicious software or software to penetrate the internal system. So here also in the report there are a couple of example they have given, real world example where the attack was possible. So in May 2023, a hacker and advocate for open source implementation in automotive industry successfully hacked the Japanese OEM's infotainment system using the tool sold online, and they have posted this evidence of the exploit on the GitHub. The hacker managed to install multiple applications via USB driver, including a file manager and third-party app over the transmission control protocol. So in normally cybersecurity, when you start and look for some of the references, you also seen one famous example of the attack which done by Charlie Miller on the Jeep. So there also you could see they have done it via the infotainment system. So in that car they had this UC Connect application through which first they have modified the firmware and then gain the remote access, and later they was sitting into their home and doing the different attacks. So it's available on the YouTube also. If you are interested, just see that attack which performed by Charlie Miller. One more example is in August 2023, researchers from Germany successfully executed a jailbreak of a US EV uh, infotainment system using the voltage fault injection attack. In this, what they could achieve is they have gotten access to root access. So root access, once you get for any particular system, you will be able to do most of the damage because you have the highest credential. So they were able to read the cryptographic public key, and they were able to perform the certain types of attack on this system. So what are the different attacks we can consider? One is jailbreaking firmware. So this is nothing but the installing unauthorized software to enable the new functionalities or compromising the security. Next is Bluetooth and Wi-Fi exploit. So we all know it's remotely accessible. So unauthorized access via poorly secured Wi-Fi connection can cause this Wi-Fi exploits or Bluetooth exploit. Next is OTA updates. So exploiting vulnerability in the over-there software update mechanism that can also be risky. And basically this happens via the infotainment system. That's why it comes this attack under the infotainment system attacks. We also have in past posted one video on over the air update and secure over the air update. So if you would like to see more detail on this, please visit the video which we made on secure over the air update. And the last one is malicious apps. So installing the apps that can access the sensitive vehicle data or your personal information. So that is also common attack on the infotainment system. So we briefly covered over the infotainment system attack. Now let's see about the next attack, which is nothing but the brute force network attack. So as name suggested, a brute force network attack is a type of cyber attacks where an attacker systematically tries all the possible combination for example, your password or encryption key or other credential to gain unauthorized access to a system or a network or an account. So that is called the brute force method. The term brute force refers to the method of trying every possible options until the correct one is found, relying on computational power and persistence rather than sophisticated technique. So how does this work? Like how does the brute force attack basically will work? So there are different steps. So first step would be target information. So attacker will identify the target such as the logging page or encrypted file or a network service. So that is the first step to perform the brute force attack. Second would be the automated tools. So attacker uses the automated tool or script to generate and try the large number of possible combination. This tool can be rapidly tested thousands or millions of possible combinations per second. So this is the second step in performing the brute force attack. Next would be systematic testing. So attacker uh, perform the systematic testing with all the combinations starting from simplest one to more progressive on the complex level. And yeah, last step is the success where if the password or key is founded, the attacker gains the access to the system or data, and then that will be utilized for his intention. Uh, so these are the way brute force attack is possible. And as we can see the attack vectors here mentioned, like weakly protected Wi-Fi networks are the one. Another is admin portals or of the connected devices like router or IoT systems or API endpoints or authentication mechanisms. So these are the attacks that is possible via this brute force network attack vectors. Now let's see about the V2X attack. So when somebody might have question like in future, where do we see that most of the attacks will come from? So the one area which is V2X attack, because this involves the uh, advanced vehicle. Nowadays we see more and more feature are added. So this is in the direction of V2X, so vehicle to everything communication. That is what V2X. So V2X attack would be probably you will see in the coming reports, or you can see it in even in internet, that this will be the focus in future for the attackers as well as the security researchers as well. So a V2X attack refers to cybersecurity threat targeting the communication system that enables vehicle to internet with their surroundings. So V2X technology allows the vehicles to communicate with other vehicles, that is V2V, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, V2I communication, vehicle to pedestrian, V2P, then vehicle to cloud, vehicle to devices, vehicle to grid, which we seen in the EV charging. That is the example of vehicle to grid and vehicle to networks. So these are the some of the communication comes under the vehicle to X attacks, and this communication is critical for enabling advanced feature like collision avoidance, traffic management, and autonomous driver. So basically ADAS system is the one which uses the V2X completely, where you can see it requires all the communication to understand the traffic management and collision detection systems, etc. Now let's see what are the different types of V2X attacks are possible. So one is spoofing. So an attacker sends the false signal or message to the vehicle infrastructure, pretending that he is legitimate entry or entity. Uh, so such example are comes under the spoofing. So in the Tara analysis also, when we do the threat analysis, we perform the threat analysis via certain methods. One common method is tried, which also covers this possible attacks vectors. The next is eavesdropping. So attackers intercept and monitor V2X communication to gather the informations such as like location, speed, driver's behavior, and this information could be used for malicious purposes like tracking or identity thefts, etc. The next one is denial of service attack. So attacker flood the V2X network with excessive traffic or malicious signal, overwhelming the system and preventing legitimate communication in into the vehicle or whichever the communication supposed to happen. But since it does not get enough time, so that the actual action which the issue should perform would be uh, in, interrupted by the denial of service attack, and this could disrupt the traffic flow or disable the safety features. And the last mentioned here is message tampering. So attackers intercept or alter the communication between the vehicle infrastructure, potentially causing the accident or traffic chaos. So these are the some of the common attack vectors described in this report. Uh, I think yeah, that was the last slide we had. So we can now go to the question if anyone have any question on the presentation.
So I have a question. So what is the difference between white hat and black hat attacks?
Okay, I think it's a good question. Uh, White hat and the black hat. So, in the layman terms, if we have to understand what is white hat attack, white hat is nothing but ethical hacking. Now, ethical hacking is a ethical way of trying to find a vulnerability in your system. So that means you are trying to identify the vulnerability not to gain some financial let's say not to exploit some financial gains, but to gain insights of what could go wrong in your system or in your design. And this is nothing but your white hat attack. Typically these are done by the experts who are part of the manufacturer design or the development team itself. This is the white hat attack. Coming to the black hat attack, quite opposite to the white hat attack, it is unethical hacking. In other terms, it is malicious hacking, which means the intent, the itself is malicious. That means you're trying to gain some financial financial gain or espionage or sabotage or breaking the system. So this is the intent of the black hat attacks. So that means the attackers that are trying to who are trying to gain access, they have bad intentions, and typically these are done by you know the hackers around the world, to basically in an illegal way and to harm the either the users or the manufacturers or the developers of the complete device under discussion. So this is the main difference between black hat and white hat attacks. Okay, so Dharmesh, one question
Hmm.
on the types of attacks that you mentioned in the key fob. So one of the
Hmm.
point that you mentioned
Yeah.
is regarding reprogramming of key fobs. How
Okay.
can reprogramming of key fobs be done?
Okay, that's very good question and interesting one too. So let me uh, just put it in some word. So how that is possible? Uh, so short answer is yes, it is possible. So car key fobs are generally reprogrammable after they are manufactured. So reprogramming a key fob is often necessary uh, if you need to replace a lost or damaged key fob, or if you want to add the additional feature to the fob to your vehicle, then also it is required. The process for reprogramming the key fob can vary depending on the make and models of the car. So there are different ways. One is entering into the programming mode. So most of the vehicles require you to enter the specific sequence of the actions to put into the car, first into programming mode, and this often involves the turning on the ignition and turn off the certain pattern, pressing the button on the dashboard, or using the combination of the pedals, something like that. Next step would be to sync the fob. So once the car is in programming mode, you typically need a press button from the key fob to sync to the car onboard computer. This may involve the holding down the lock key or unlock button for the certain amount of the time from the key fob. So once this syncing between the key fob and car issue is established, next would be you will go for the reprogramming of the key fob or flashing the particular firmware to the key fob via the same communication, wireless communication, how the key fob interact with this issue. And the next step would be the test the fob. So after programming, test the key fob to ensure that it works correctly, and this usually involves the checking if the key fob can lock unlock the door, or if it has the remote start feature is working or not, testing the feature of igniting the car. But it's depend on like what are the feature included in the key fob. Some key fob will come only for locking unlocking purposes. Some will also provide the advanced feature to ignite the car or opening the trunk door, etc.
So, Dharmesh, you mentioned about brute force network attacks. Yeah, so brute force is nothing but you randomly go inside and then try all possibilities. But I'm wondering, are there different kinds of brute force attack, or are there any kinds of classification on the brute force attack?
Mhm. Yeah, it's also an interesting question. So, if we consider that brute force attack, you are right that we try all the combinations, but it is also classified in different category. One is simple brute force attack, where the attacker tries every possible combination. Characterize attack like first start with the character ABCD or some numbers to crack the password, and that is the simplest one. Another is dictionary attack, where the attacker uses the predefined list of the common password or phrases which he has in his dictionary and guesses the correct one. So that is the second type. One more is hybrid brute force attack, where they will have combinations of the previous two, simple and dictionary attack. Next is credentials stuffing. So the attacker uses the previous leaked username or password combination from other breaches to gain access to different systems. For example, using credential from social media and breach to try to logging into the banking site or something. The next one is reverse brute force attacks, where attacker uses the known password and tries it against a large number of users username or accounts. For example, using the password admin123 to try login into multiple accounts. So these are some of the various classification of the brute force attacks.
So I have one more question. So what is the difference between weaknesses and vulnerabilities?
Mhm. Yeah, that's also interesting question, and it seems to be very easy, but yeah, there is some difference between weaknesses and vulnerability. So by definition, if we go, a vulnerability is the specific instance of the weakness that can exploit by the threat actors to compromise the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of the systems or data. So it represents an actual security risk. Let's understand with an example. Suppose you have a house which is made of glass, and inside the house you have millions of the uh, dollars stored. So here we can consider, let's say, our asset would be the money, but what would be the weakness? So weakness would be the house made of glass. Now let's say you have same house, but it is built on the 150th floor. So here your weakness remain the same. It is still a house with made of glass. However, now the vulnerability would be different. So in first case where the house is at the ground floor, the vulnerability is more, and the second case where your house is 150th floor, vulnerability is uh, less. Third case would be that you have same house, however there is no money inside, so it's empty. So here also your weakness remains the same, like it's still a glass house, that is weakness. However, here there is no vulnerability because there is no asset to be protected. So in summary, a weakness is a general flaw or deficiency that may or may not lead to the security issue. However, a vulnerability is a specific weakness that can exploit it to cause harm.
Thank you guys. If you like this video, do not forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.